I think that's not enough. I think the mystery of Indian growth is that you don't see it when you look at the bottom half of the population. You don't see the 7% GDP growth rate when you look at the consumption pattern and the living standards and access to education and health of the bottom half of India. You don't see this very high growth rate, and I think that's part of the problem. Sometimes these growth rates might be a bit exaggerated, and sometimes it's just that you have very unbalanced distribution of growth, and I think this is not sustainable.
There is a bit of a paradox as far as India is concerned, because for a decade we were ruled by a party whose economic ideology was more left of center, that believed in this concept of so-called inclusive growth, that believed in entitlements, higher public investments in healthcare, education, which is what you're referring to as well. And yet, after a decade of governance, we saw very little change as far as the transformation of the country was concerned, which is why the electorate voted overwhelmingly against the party and voted in favor of a party that promised faster economic growth. So how do you reconcile this then?
Well, the question is, will the new party deliver? And it's not entirely clear, because sometimes I see a temptation in Indian politics, to go for a conflict of identity between groups, and I don't think that's going to bring more growth and more balanced growth to the country. So, I think India, of course, has a legacy of inequality between groups, between lower caste, higher caste, between the Muslim and the Hindu, which was very difficult to erase and to diminish like this in a few decades. And probably in the first decades after independence, India did not take sufficiently seriously the need to invest in basic education, basic health for the bottom groups of the country, and the system of reservations that has been put in place, was not sufficient to counteract the lack of proper public resources available for the bottom 50% children in this country, the quality of health care to which they have access to, and education to which they have access to, has been insufficient under all governments.
Are you saying India at this stage, from an economic policy point of view, needs more left-of-center thinking, needs more investment in infrastructure, healthcare, education, even at the expense of expanding its fiscal deficit? Should you not worry about the fiscal, discipline, so to say?
Well, I think the Indian elite at some point will have to pay a bit more tax. And I think to begin with, we have to make the tax system more transparent, and we have to better know what the Indian elite is paying or not paying. And I think, the lack of transparency about the tax system is not the best way to build more trust in government, more trust in the tax administration and other public spending. So I think that's very important. And in the West, it took huge historical shocks for the elite to accept these fiscal and social reforms, which in the end delivered both a more equal society and also more sustainable growth and development. And I very much hope that the Indian elite face their responsibilities without similar shocks, and that they are, in the end, they are smarter than the elites in the West, which it took them a very long time and major shocks to face their responsibilities.
Since we are talking about the rich, I have to ask you, because you have very provocative views on what the rich are doing right now world over, which is philanthropy, which is diverting a significant portion of their wealth for philanthropic activities. Just the other day, we had Mark Zuckerberg pledge almost his entire wealth for philanthropic activities. You don't believe that's sufficient?
Well, from what I understand, he's going to transfer very gradually his wealth to a vehicle which in the end will be controlled by himself, by his wife, by his children. So this doesn't look like, to me, if you want to give money in the interest of others and you want to contribute to the public interest, then you should not control the foundation or the whatever vehicle you choose to create. If you keep the control of the structure, it means you keep the power. That doesn't look too much like philanthropy to me. Philanthropy this has to come in addition to taxation. It cannot come instead of taxation. I think it's not a good situation when you see, Warren Buffett in the US told us that, he's paying less tax than his secretary. And I think that cannot work this way. And actually, Warren Buffett is asking to pay more tax. So this has to come from the tax system itself, that you want, the people with the highest level of income and wealth to pay in proportion to their income and in proportion to their wealth. They need to pay at least as much as what the middle class is paying. Otherwise, there's a risk that at some point, the middle class, including in Europe or in North America, they don't want to pay anymore. If they feel that people above them, they are paying a lower effective tax rate than what they are paying in the middle, this cannot work. So I think you cannot organize societies where you have thousands of people at the very top, who want to decide by themselves how much they want to contribute to the public good.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.